First part of this program that helps patients lose weight is focusing on having your food in the form of meals only. This means that when you get up, if you have breakfast, when you get up, you have breakfast, but then you don't think about food at all. You don't put anything else at all in your mouth until lunch. And then from lunch, nothing else goes in the mouth until dinner. And after dinner, no late night snacking, nothing like that. You have dinner, you brush your teeth, and then either you do your work or watch some TV and go to bed afterwards. The real focus on is that the food comes in meals, but when you're not having a meal, there is absolutely no food, not even healthy snacks. Because a lot of times it's that impulsivity, it's that behavior of snacking that leads to a lot of calories throughout the day. And so people will say, well, I have a healthy snack. I had, an apple or a banana or some almonds. The problem is that behavior is not tracked that well. And we don't keep track of all the calories we're having in the forms of snacks. So an apple is not a bad thing. Almonds are not a bad thing, but it's better to incorporate them into meals and have 2 or 3 meals a day and avoid little eating throughout the day. And the same goes for drinks. Generally, calories from drinks are not felt the same way as food. And so obviously you can have coffee and tea and water, and most people have a little bit of milk or sugar in their coffee, and that's fine. But try to avoid heavy cream, something like 35%, especially when we're pouring, because a lot of people don't notice how much they're pouring into a drink. A serving size for heavy cream is only a tablespoon, and when we pour, we're probably putting in 5, 7, 10 tablespoons. So it's better to avoid the heavy stuff, but if you're having just a little bit of milk and sugar, that's no problem. You gotta have your coffee the way that you want. Tea, a little bit of milk is fine too, a little bit of sugar is fine too, and generally water. There are things like soda water which work, a soda stream machine to carbonate your water, Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, they're fine alternatives to soda, but as much as possible, try to avoid things like soda, juice, even things like protein shakes unless you're trying to add protein for any specific reason, avoiding things like fruit smoothies, meal replacements like Ensure, anything where you're drinking calories can land you in a little bit of trouble because the calories add on and add on and add on throughout the day. And so if you're having, 2 Ensures a day for the sake of the vitamins and the protein, you're actually adding several hundred calories a day, which is probably getting in the way of your weight loss. Of course, there are always exceptions. If you're planning out a snack as part of your day, if you're the kind of person that prefers to have 2 meals and a snack, but the snack is planned out, that's fine. That's not what I mean by snacking. What I mean by snacking is that impulsive eating, or that grabbing something where you're not aware of it or you didn't notice it. That's where we can land into a little bit of trouble. What are you actually supposed to eat? Well, I provide you with a grocery list in the handout that gives you a tiered based list of the things to kind of look for in the grocery store. This grocery list is color coded green, blue, orange, and red, and that corresponds to about how much of each you should have. So green is unlimited. I don't even want you thinking about it. If you see green, you can have as much of it as you want. Blue is a couple times a day, orange is a couple times a week, and red is a couple times a month. And so keep in mind, these are guidelines, not rules. So for example, if there's something you like in the orange category or something you like in the blue category, it's fine to move it up a notch, okay? It's really about more intuitive eating and eating what you like in generally healthy proportions rather than focusing on too many rules. Because again, as you get bogged down in rules, sustainability goes down the drain. Now, this grocery list is what you're going to try to fill your house with. It's not all you're allowed to eat, but it is what you mostly want to fill your house with. Another alternative strategy, create a list of the meals you want to have that week. Say make 4 or 5 meals, list out the ingredients for each of these meals, and turn that into your grocery list and know that that's what you're going to buy for that week. Something to make it a little bit easier would be to look at these recipes and cross out anything that either overlaps or is similar enough. For example, if one recipe calls for black beans and the other calls for pinto beans, those are close enough to some people that you may just want to get one of them and make both meals with that. And so that can save you a little bit of time. Finally, you want to just look into your fridge and make sure that there's nothing that you're going to go buy that you already have, just to simplify things for you. And now, these things that you buy from the grocery store, there may be a lot of things on the grocery list that you've never heard of before or that you haven't tried in a while. Anything like that, I do strongly suggest that you buy it at least once because you don't know how your tastes may have changed over the years. Palates evolve, and something that you didn't like 10 years ago, you may enjoy now. On the other hand though, if there's something you really dislike, don't force yourself to buy it just because it's supposed to be healthy. I tell everyone I'm a physician and I don't like broccoli, so I don't eat broccoli. There are 100 other vegetables in the world, and I do try to include as many vegetables on that list as possible so that you're not focused on one thing. I don't like broccoli, so what do? I eat spinach, I eat cauliflower, I eat green beans. There are 100 other sources of zinc, iron, or fiber that I can get from food that I don't have to force myself to eat certain foods. And so again, it goes back to trying to eat as much of what you want, not what someone else is telling you to eat, so that you're enjoying your food. Another hint would be to look up recipes. If you've never seen a vegetable before, or if you've never cooked this specific vegetable or protein or bean before, you can look it up online. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of these social media platforms have hundreds and hundreds of recipes. And so by looking them up and making something new once in a while, it does add to that sustainability because it makes not only eating the food enjoyable, but it makes making the food enjoyable. And so that enjoyment and that fun in making food and having food and trying new things can keep you going for a long time. So we said the grocery list is what's going to be in your house, but it's not the only thing you're going to eat. What did I mean by that exactly? Well, you want to create an environment that works for you as much as possible, and that's the whole point of focusing on grocery shopping, not really self-control at home. If you focus on grocery shopping, and if most of what you have in your house is healthy, it's going to be relatively easy to eat healthy. Of course, you're going to want some things. The grocery list doesn't include things like ice cream or chocolate or potato chips. That doesn't mean I don't want you to eat them. In fact, I want you to eat them when you want them. And that's important because we do not want cravings to build up. When cravings build up over time and you're really, really fighting against them, they are eventually going to get the better of all of us. I don't care if you're an Olympic athlete. If there's something you want, you're eventually going to have it. And so we don't want to have it when the cravings have built up, because that lends its way to binging. And so you can stop something for several weeks, and then because you've been craving it for so long, you would have it so much more frequently in the future when you didn't need to. Instead, if you have it once a week or once in a while, it's never going to harm you. If you want ice cream, if you really like ice cream, I want you to go out to Dairy Queen and buy ice cream. I don't want you buying a 12-pack of Haagen-Dazs and leaving it in your fridge or freezer, because that's going to make you go walk to it once or twice a day. But if you go to Dairy Queen once a week, that's never going to do anything. 200 calories in 1 week has never affected someone's weight. It's that daily eating of certain things that adds up and causes hundreds of calories a day to accumulate, and that's what leads to weight loss. And that applies for a lot of other things. You like burgers? Sure, yeah, don't buy a 12-pack or an 8-pack of beef patties from Costco, but go out to McDonald's or go out to wherever you want to have a burger and have that once a week or once every 2 weeks. Again, it's not a big deal. It's all about how rare you have these things and making sure to have them when you want them, but not having them in the home, because by not having to look at them the whole time, it does help keep those cravings at bay a little bit. Not everyone has the luxury of living with either people who have their exact same diet or living alone where they control all of the groceries in the house. What happens if you live with someone who doesn't want to have less things in the house, who wants to have those snacks? There are a couple of strategies you can try. Number one would be trying to put as many of those snacks as possible outside of the kitchen, either in a pantry somewhere or in a different room where the other person has access to them, but you're not forced to look at them all the time, because by seeing them, you may crave them more. A second option, if there are no other rooms in the house, would be to, yes, leave them in the kitchen, but have them inside cabinets or drawers so that, again, you're not looking at them. The last thing you want to do is have those things that you crave and have them out on countertops and on the island where you see them all day, because eventually you are going to want them. And so, again, this goes back to letting your environment work for you. You shouldn't be working harder than your environment. And so by making sure they're out of sight, you're making sure you're less likely to develop those cravings and a lot less likely to reach for something throughout the day. You go about creating your plate. I don't want you to start with all meals right now. I want you to just start with dinners, but try to create dinner in a way that you fill up 30 to 50% of the plate with vegetables first, and then add about 25% protein, and then 25% of whatever you like. The vegetables are obviously low in calories, but they give you a lot of vitamins and fiber, which is very good. And then the protein obviously is protein and is the building block for the body and helps you maintain muscle, but also has a satiating effect. protein is very filling. And so when you have protein with every meal and try to do that as much as possible, you're a lot less likely to get hungry in between meals, and you're a lot less likely to want to snack in between meals. So making sure there's protein with every meal is a good idea. But going back to dinners, you want a lot of vegetables, a good amount of protein, but always make sure to add a little bit of what you like, because that what you like is what's going to keep you going from one meal to the next. Important point is addressing some foods that are thought to be healthy that aren't quite as healthy. A good example is something like fruit yogurt. They come in these tiny little packs and they have something like 100 calories and several teaspoons of sugar in just that small package. Now, if you were to have one, that's not a big deal, but most people, to feel satiated, they're gonna have several of those yogurts, and those calories can add up. So just be careful when you're grocery shopping about things like added sugar, because a lot of times foods that were healthy, like yogurt, are going to be made unhealthy so that they're more palatable and they can be sold. So just be careful with that. Try to stick to things like plain yogurt. If you like the flavor of fruits in yogurt, it might be a lot easier to dice up some strawberries or slice a banana up and put that in your yogurt, because at least then you're getting the real fruit as opposed to just tablespoons of sugar with some flavoring. The opposite also goes for when you have something that you've made that is healthy and then you add something unhealthy in it at home. So if you're making a salad is fine, and having a little bit of dressing on salad is fine too, but avoid creating a salad and then smothering it in things like cheese and Caesar sauce, because then it's no longer a salad. It is several hundred calories and it's very heavy and is not likely to lead to the same weight loss that you were hoping for. Opposite of that is adding healthy foods to things that were unhealthy. For example, if you were to make an omelet, but you were to make it with 3 or 4 eggs, add 10 strips of bacon and smother that in cheese, but then you sprinkle on some chives, it's not suddenly an omelet with vegetables, it's just an omelet with a lot of bacon. An alternative for that would be to use 1 or 2 yolks, add a little bit of egg whites, and instead of the bacon, you can dice up some mushrooms and peppers and onions and add them into that omelet. And that way, in your breakfast, you just got 3 servings of vegetables with a good amount of protein and a little bit of fat as well. That, as an alternative, would be much healthier than having the bacon and the eggs with a little bit of vegetables added. Good strategy is substitutions. Now, you have to be careful with these because you don't want to make too many substitutions to the point where you don't like your food, but there are always opportunities to do so. I tell people, make the substitutions you're actually willing to eat. So for example, for me, I like cheese and ice cream, so I'm not going to substitute for them for anything else. I'm not going to have frozen yogurt. I'm not going to have soy cheese. If I like those things, I'm going to have real ice cream and I'm going to have real cheese. But because I don't care as much about pasta, I'll have soybean or chickpea based pasta or spaghetti, or I'll have spaghetti squash or riced cauliflower. And for me, that's usually about enough to satiate that part of my appetite where I'm not craving rice or spaghetti or pasta. And so for me, that's a sustainable substitution. Another example is protein powder pancake. Those are usually about 75-80% of the flavor of a real pancake, but in terms of its health profile, it's much better. And so you can use the opportunity of going grocery shopping to figure out which foods are you willing to substitute and actually taste close enough to the thing you like, but also draw the line where there are things you really like and you should have the real thing so that, again, you're enjoying your food. Some other things we can do to facilitate weight loss are exercise, sleep, and managing stress. Exercise works in a couple of ways. There is the direct way where when you exercise, you burn calories, so it's easier to be in a caloric deficit because you're using more calories every day. But exercise also does improve several other things, including stress management and sleep quality. And both of these have effects on your basal metabolic rate, which in turn does help with weight loss. Exercise helps you sleep better, and there are studies that show when you sleep better, you are more likely to lose weight. There's a study that I always like to talk about where they looked at doctors who worked on night shifts and found that doctors who worked night shifts not only ate 500 more calories a night, they also had a lower basal metabolic rate by about 100 calories per day. And so poor sleep doesn't just make you make worse choices and more likely to binge and more likely to snack, it does slightly slow down your metabolism. And so by making sure we get adequate sleep and good exercise, we try to address both of those problems at once. The second thing that exercise can do is it can help you build muscle mass. Now, muscle has a higher basal metabolic rate than fat, and so the more muscle you have, the more calories you're burning just by resting. But keep in mind, when people work out, Putting on muscle is pretty difficult, so you're not likely to put on pounds and pounds and pounds of muscle, but you are likely to add in a little bit of muscle, and even that little muscle that you add will help as well. Finally, making sure you manage stress is also important. As you know, stress can have a lot of negative effects on the body, and one of those effects does include affecting the basal metabolic rate. So making sure you're managing your stress can help make sure that your basal metabolic rate isn't being slowed down by those stress hormones.